Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Jayam Vishnu Parabrahman Saparvajakacharya Ostatara Satashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14, Text 26. Nayasya loke svajana parova Nayasya loke svajana parova Natyad rito no takaschid vikharya Mayang vratayat charana pavindham Ashashmahejang batu bhukta bhogam Nayasya loke svajana parova Nachadrito no takaschid vigharya Mayang ratayat charana pavindham Ashashmahejang bata bhukta bhogam. Yasaloke sajana parava Vikarya Vayang ratayat charana. Ladies, someone? Na, never. Yasya, of whom. Loke, in the world. Svajana, kinsman. Para, unconnected. Va, not. Na, neither. Ati, greater. Adrita, favorable. Na, not. Uta, or. Kashchit, anyone. Vigarhya, criminal. Vayam, we. Vratai, by vows. Yat, whose. Charana, feet. Apavidham, rejected. Ashashmahe, respectfully worship. Ajam, Mahaprasad, Bata, certainly. Hukta bhogam, remnants of foodstuff. Translation, and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with him. He does not regard anyone as very favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his foodstuff, and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Please repeat. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with him. He does not regard anyone as very favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his foodstuff, and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Purport. Kashyapa informed his wife that just because Lord Shiva happened to be his brother-in-law, that should not encourage her in her offense towards him. Kashyapa warned her that actually Lord Shiva is not connected with anyone, nor is anyone his enemy. Since he is one of the three controllers of universal affairs, he is equal to everyone. His greatness is incomparable because he is a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that among all the devotees of the Personality of Godhead, Lord Shiva is the greatest. Thus, the remnants of foodstuff left by him are accepted by other devotees as Mahaprasad, or great spiritual foodstuff. The remnants of foodstuff offered to Lord Krishna are called prasad, but when the same prasad is eaten by a great devotee like Lord Shiva, it is called Mahaprasad. Lord Shiva is so great that he does not care for the material prosperity for which every one of us is so eager. Parvati, who is the powerful material nature personified, is under his full control as his wife, yet he does not use her even to build a residential house. He prefers to remain without shelter, and his great wife also agrees to live with him humbly. People in general worship Goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, for material prosperity, but Lord Shiva engages her in his service without material desire. He simply advises his great wife that of all kinds of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the highest, and greater than that is the worship of a great devotee or anything in relation with Vishnu. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyanangana Shalakaya Chakshu Inmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, Lord Kashyapa Muni is giving advice to his wife because she wants to engage in something that will be very unfortunate for her and actually for the whole world. So, because her desires would be an offense against Lord Shiva, Kashyapa, who's Lord Shiva's brother-in-law, is trying to persuade her by various means that it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea to offend Lord Shiva. You'll simply suffer the consequences. So, in this verse in purport, we're discussing how Lord Shiva is equal to everybody. And there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochiti Nakankshiti Sama Sarva Sarveshu Bhuteshu, which means all living entities equally disposed to all living entities. So this is exactly Lord Shiva's mood. So someone who has purified vision doesn't see ephemeral positions. That's what is described in the purport of this verse in Bhagavad Gita. They don't actually see, superior, inferior, as we see in the material world, because they're seeing every living entity as the part and parcel of Krishna. So that's purified vision. That is transcendental vision. And this is being advised to Diti not to offend Lord Shiva, but to behave appropriately. So Lord Shiva his nature is very gentle. But actually when Sati went to her father's place uninvited and was so offended that her father was not even, Daksha was not even having a place for Lord Shiva, who has to be worshipped in all yagyas, but in the end she decided her body was contaminated and she gave up her body. Lord Shiva, though he's so gentle, then unleashed all sorts of disasters on that sacrifice and everybody who took part in that, was taking part in that sacrifice. So though he's very gentle, if the consequence for deity will be that all hell will be unleashed if she does offend him. So, so Lord Shiva is often mentioned. It's mentioned here in the purport that he's the greatest devotee. So why is he the greatest devotee? When you think of all the devotees of the Lord, why is he considered, often mentioned, that he's the greatest devotee? Well, Lord Shiva is so much trusted, but we know that he's not actually a living entity as us, and he's not actually Vishnu. Prabhupada always gives that example of milk becoming yogurt. So he's not the Supreme Lord, he's not the milk, but he's different. But yet he's often called Bhagavan, and he's very superior, in charge of the mode of ignorance, etc. So the reason that the Lord favours him so much is because he is such a humble and gentle and surrendered devotee. So he actually asked Lord Shiva to do many things that he wouldn't ask other devotees to do. He had some very irksome tasks given to him, Lord Shiva, and he accepted whatever irksome task was given to him by the Lord, and he does it perfectly. So, for example, when the milk ocean was being churned, and a very viciously strong poison came out, the demigods went to Lord Vishnu and said, "What can we do? Help! This poison's coming out. Everyone's going to be killed." He said, "You should go and ask Lord Shiva to save you." So Lord Shiva then drank that poison. And as he had it in his throat, he was thinking, "Oh my gosh, if that goes down, my Lord's there in my heart. That won't be very nice for my Lord." So he kept that poison in his throat. The result was his throat was burned and became like a bluish colour. So he's often called Nilakanta, blue-throated one. So also we know that as Rudra, Lord Shiva is the one who destroys the whole universe. And that's not a nice thing, to destroy the whole universe. But Lord Shiva willingly undertook whatever the Lord designated, he undertook that. He also ordered Lord Shiva, "I want you to take birth as Shankaracharya, and I want you to preach against me." And Lord Shiva said, "I can't do that, my Lord. Please ask someone else." And the Lord said, "No one else is qualified. I want you to do this." So that was his very difficult task. He came and preached Mayavad philosophy all over the place, and that spread like wildfire. So it wasn't something that was dear to the Lord's heart, because Lord Shiva's heart, because he wants to glorify Krishna, but he accepted, and he did it with great gusto. He also gave various benedictions to demons who would come and pray to him, even though he knew that those benedictions would not be used in a positive spiritual way. So he gave benedictions to Ravana, Rikasura, Shalva, Jayadrat. So why would he do that? Why would Lord Shiva be giving benedictions that are going to be used, and they were very negatively against Krishna? But he did that to further Krishna's pastimes. By doing those, giving those benedictions, then it was like churning the nectar for the pastimes that came from that. And also he left loopholes, like with Jayadratha. When Jayadratha was praying, he was so insulted by the Pandavas after he'd committed an offence to Draupadi, and they chastised him severely. Then he did very difficult austerities until Lord Shiva blessed him. And he asked, what do you want? And he said, I want to be able to kill the Pandavas. He said, well, I can't grant you that because they're totally under the Lord's protection, but I can grant that you will defeat in battle 4 of them, but you can't actually defeat Arjuna. But he also had a benediction that he wouldn't be able to die unless his head, Lord Shiva gave him this loophole that his head, if it happened to be severed from his body and thrown on the ground by his father, then he would die, otherwise not. And Jayadratha thought, as if my father's going to do that. So he thought he was safe. And then we have that wonderful story on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, that whole day where Jayadratha was able to defeat all the Pandavas except Arjuna, and that the battle, because they had placed him right at the back of the, like 27 miles back, he was placed, because they didn't want, Arjuna had said, well, if I don't kill Jayadratha, I'll enter fire. So they thought, right, this is our opportunity, you go. He wanted to actually leave the battle, but they convinced him, no, we'll protect you. You go right to the back, and we'll form 3 formations that they can't get through, and you'll be safe. So Jayadratha followed their instructions, and only by Krishna's grace, Krishna tricking and allowing the sun to seem as if it had set, then everybody let down their guard. This is just at the end of the day when they'd fought all day long, and then Arjuna, Krishna warned him, take that arrow and take that head and send it to, there was a place right close to the battlefield where his father, Jayadratha's father, was performing austerities. And so he actually guided that head onto the lap of the father, and the father was meditating, it was evening time, and he just threw this head on the ground, and Jayadratha was killed. So Lord Shiva sort of facilitated many, many pastimes. When we read the Krishna book, there's many times when people pray to him and he'll give benediction, because he's called Asutosh, or easily pleased. So people, devotees, those sort of mode of ignorance devotees know, if I just, please Lord Shiva, I can get this and this, and that's what they're after. So he's kind to them because he has this very generous nature, and as it's described him here, he doesn't actually see anyone as a relative. He doesn't see people as favourable or unfavourable, because he's situated beyond that, being such an exalted devotee. And the other thing that he had to irksome task was he had to take charge of the mode of ignorance. So we know that in the mode of ignorance, often it's talked like the ghosts and hobgoblins are his associates, Lord Shiva's associates. So, a normal person is not going to like to hang around with ghosts and hobgoblins, but Lord Shiva, because he's completely transcendental, he's totally absorbed all the time in remembering Krishna. So it doesn't worry him that he's at the crematorium, he's got skulls around his neck, and he's associating with these people that normally one would not like to associate. But he's just very kind and compassionate to those in the lower modes, because Krishna placed him in charge of the mode of ignorance. So we know that for us, if we associate with people who are in the lower modes, then we naturally, things rub off, we get affected. And Prabhupada would always say, if you associate with a drunkard, you'll become a drunkard. Associate with a thief, you'll become a thief. So how could he remain above? But because he's so absorbed and he's just in completely blissfully in love with the Lord, then he's completely unaffected by those around him. And we had a similar example with Srila Prabhupada. In 1966, 67, those the people that he associated with were completely in the lower modes. And when he started his movement, the devotees that came were generally not very elevated at all, and addicted to intoxication, etc., etc. So he could have chosen to be in Vrindavan, surrounded by God brothers and talking about Krishna, but he remained with these hippies and lower modes, people in the lower modes. He was surrounded by them 24 hours a day, but he was completely untouched, just like a lotus flower on the water. It's not touched, or even a lotus leaf sits on the water. It's not actually touched. So Srila Prabhupada was not touched by that association, even though it would be, for another person, it would have been very draining. And of course the devotees, the early devotees, they didn't know anything, like when Shamasundar was carving Lord Jagannath deities, Srila Prabhupada went to see how he was going, and he took his cane and he flicked a packet of cigarettes from Subhadra's head. But he was never at all unkind or scathing, or and he said to Shamasundar, you should smoke one less every day until you can give it up, which he did. So he wasn't affected. We saw that no matter what situation Srila Prabhupada was in, he wasn't affected by the modes. So similarly, we can understand when we hear about the acharyas too. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a lot to do with the English, but he was totally always completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and he didn't become like them, like so many other Indians became influenced and became like them. But of course, the Mahabhagavatas, they're completely connected with Krishna, so they don't have this ability to get contaminated by lower modes. So we can ask, why are the pure devotees so dear to Krishna? There's so many very nice, this is a Jiva Goswami's Priti Sandarbha. There's so many nice quotes in here, because Jiva Goswami is able to gather quotes from whatever point he's making. He can gather quotes from various scriptures, because he's so learned. And to understand why the devotees are so dear, I mean, here particularly we're talking about Lord Shiva and how he has no material attachments, not even to a house. He lives under a huge banyan tree, and he could have anything. Maya Devi could give him anything. Durga Devi, she's in charge of the whole material energy, but he doesn't use her at all. So, because his mind, as we've been discussing, is completely fixed on Krishna. So, this is a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14-16. I follow a devotee who is peaceful and desireless, who always thinks of me, who sees everyone equally, and who thinks of no one as his enemy. We've just heard this about Lord Shiva. I follow him so I may become purified by the dust of his feet. So this is Krishna's devotees. They're the ones that serve him, but Krishna's following them to get purified by the dust of their lotus feet. And that is the case also with Lord Shiva. This is another quote from Srimad Bhagavatam 9:4-63. I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the cores of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee, even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. And this one is from the Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya. Although I am unbound, I am bound to my devotees with ropes of love. Although I am unconquered, I am conquered by my devotees. Although I am supremely independent, I am controlled by them. So these are very nice quotes to give us Krishna's attitude to the devotees, to these pure devotees. How he relishes doing things like the whole purpose of human life is to connect with Krishna. But once one connects and develops that pure love for Krishna, Krishna then feels a debt to the devotee. That's how kind he is. He's very grateful. That's one of his wonderful qualities. He's very grateful. So for these devotees, he's always with them, and he's always taking care of everything they need and following them in every moment of their lives. And we saw with Srila Prabhupada, whatever Srila Prabhupada wanted, it repeatedly was given by Krishna. Again and again we saw that in a very wonderful way. If they needed an editor would walk in and suddenly, be there for 3 months to do all the editing, and then someone else would come along. If they needed artists, someone could come in who was an artist, and Srila Prabhupada would engage them. Whatever Srila Prabhupada needed, Krishna sent, always, very wonderfully. So also there's a mention of the remnants of foodstuffs being eagerly taken by devotees of Lord Shiva. So, and Prabhupada talks about Mahaprasad, and I know that if ever there was any prasadam left on Srila Prabhupada's plate, it'd be like, everybody be trying to get that prasadam. And usually, of course, it was the servants and the sannyasis, but then by the time it would come down to us, there'd be some orange peel on the plate. So we would very eagerly eat that orange peel, anything we could get from Srila Prabhupada's plate, because we knew the value of this Mahaprasad. So there's a nice story about the value of Mahaprasad, as in it's been offered to Krishna and then it's offered to a devotee, and how perfect it is. So this is with Ramanujacharya, and he had taken bath in the Kaveri. He was taken bath, and then one of the pujaris from the nearby temple brought out some Mahaprasad and gave him in his hand some Mahaprasad. So he ate that prasadam, and then he went to the Kaveri river to wash his hands, and as he washed those bits of rice off his hands, some fish came, and they ate that rice, and then immediately they took on 4 armed forms, and they went back to the spiritual world. So they took on 4 hand Vishnu forms, and off they went. And the disciples are like, "What's going on? We eat your remnants all the time. How come we can't get a body and go back to Lord Vishnu?" So then Ramanujacharya was explaining that those fish, when they took that those pieces of rice, those pieces of Mahaprasadam, they felt total dependence on those grains. They just felt completely dependent at that time on those grains. So he was saying that, for example, you might be eating and thinking this rice doesn't have enough salt in it. So you're thinking of your senses. But in this case, the fish were just totally they just wanted to take that rice. It was like meant everything to them. So because they took that Mahaprasad in a nice manner, in a very sort of holistic manner, then they were given that purification. So, so Lord Shiva's Mahaprasad, if someone eats Lord Shiva's Mahaprasadam, then they advanced. And so people are eager, the devotees of Lord Shiva are eager to take his remnants. And there's a very nice story in Caitanya Caritamrita about taking the remnants of devotees. There was a devotee called Kalidas, and he lived in Bengal, and his vow was to take the remnants of all the Vaishnavas in Bengal. So he would travel around, and he would often, because people didn't like to give remnants, so he would give gifts. He would give mangoes on a leaf plate, and after those devotees took that prasad, then he would go where the mangoes had been thrown, and he would relish eating that Mahaprasad. So he did this all over Bengal. And then he went to Orissa, and when he was in Orissa, Lord Caitanya was washing his feet. He was washing his feet as he was going to the Jagannath temple. And this Kalidas came, and he took one mouthful of the water from Lord Caitanya, another one, 3 mouthfuls from the water from Lord Chaitanya's feet, and then Lord Caitanya said, enough. But Lord Caitanya did make a statement about the glories of the... He didn't like, because he was always acting as a sannyasi, not as the Supreme Lord, he didn't like that the devotees did that. But because this devotee was so special, and he'd taken remnants in such a humble way of all the Vaishnavas, and he'd become so purified from that the Lord wanted to give him that extra favor. So it's stated in the Ansha-lila that the dust of the lotus feet of devotees, water that has washed the feet of devotees, and remnants of food left by devotees, these are 3 powerful substances. By rendering service to these 3, one attains the supreme goal of ecstatic love for Krishna. And then Lord Chaitanya says, this is loudly declared in the revealed scriptures again and again. So that's why the devotees were so eager to take Lord Shiva's remnants. And I just heard a Prabhupada memory recently where Indradyumna Swami was saying that they arranged to wash Srila Prabhupada's feet, and then he and the other devotee who'd made the arrangements just went downstairs and took that water, and they just drank and drank and drank it. And the devotees were beating on the door trying to get in and get some of that water, but they drank it all. Anyway, not very merciful of them, but they really wanted that mercy. We didn't get the opportunity very much to wash Srila Prabhupada's feet and get that water, but it was certainly a blessing when we did. So Lord Shiva, of course, he's detached and he's renounced. So it is explained here in this verse that people in general worship Goddess Durga for material prosperity. But even though everybody is so eager to have that prosperity, everyone, he says, Lord Shiva is so great, he does not care for the material prosperity for which every one of us is so eager. So it's a fact that, if you want to make someone happy in the material world, you give them a large amount of money or tell them they've won the lotto, they'll be ecstatic for a few minutes. But for a devotee, such things are completely unimportant. So Krishna has 6 opulences, as we know, and one of those 6 opulences is all renunciation. So Lord Shiva has that opulence of renunciation. It's not like he wishes that he had a nice place, a nice bed to lie in, or a nice place to live. He's completely self-sufficiently happy not having those things. But for most people, they form like the goal of life, and people work so hard all their lives to have a comfortable situation. But unfortunately, when people work hard their whole lives to get a comfortable situation, they're performing all sorts of karma, and all sorts of reactions come back to them, and thus they further on their lives. They will, at the end of this life, they'll go into another body, and they will have to receive the good and bad, mostly bad, karma in that next life, and then on and on and on it goes. And that is how we have spent uncountable millions of lives in this material world. Because we have these attachments, in every body we have attachments, and we try to facilitate ourselves to gain those attachments. But what we are gaining is another body. And we are gaining many more reactions in the future. So it's a really special quality when someone has this mood of renunciation. And it's not an easy thing for someone who doesn't have it. And everybody has little part of Krishna's, some parts of Krishna's qualities. But I always feel like it's somebody who is very blessed, who really does have that sense of renunciation, because it's not a usual thing. It's so unusual. Of course, when you go to India, you see a lot more people are able to be yogis, and they have no, they're not bothered about their living situation, and that's because they have, in the previous life, they have fostered this renunciation, and it's kind of more easy for them. And I know that I see some devotees have that tendency, to be renounced and give up things, and it's always like, wow. It's always a pretty special quality to have. So Lord Shiva is like the personification of it. And his wife could manufacture him a palace on every planet and the best of everything. But it's not his mood. He's very happy with nothing except having that wonderful love of the Lord within his heart. So he performs his duties very nicely for the Lord's pleasure. And he remains the most dear devotee of Lord Krishna. So all glories to Lord Shiva. I wonder if anybody has any questions or comments or anything they'd like to say. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Bye.